is this show, by the way?
You guys can stick around for as long. It's a 2-hour show. Guests usually stick around for an hour. If all you've got is a half an hour or 45, that's fine too.
Okay.
All right, and we are live. Welcome to Slow News Day Live Sunday. My name is Steve Poikinen. I am here in frigid Boulder Creek, California. I am absolutely looking forward to today's show. Joining me from an undisclosed location in Washington, D.C. are the two gentlemen who are responsible for the new documentary film, Embassy Protectors. I am with Al Suarez and David Tornheim. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. And I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the clip for the trailer for your doc, and then we will talk after that. Where's my goddamn volume?
Building is inviolable, meaning it cannot be seized.
Preventing food from going up!
What's the police stopping them from getting food into the building?
You guys are breaking the law! Come on! Inside! Shut up for a second! Come on! Inside! We have been holding down this space for over 2 weeks now.
Back up. Y'all do the job.
¿Quiénes somos? ¿Qué queremos?
All right. And by the way, I'm definitely looking forward to the completed version of this film. I don't even know if you're done with it yet. Why don't you guys please let me know what prompted you to make the flick, and then we'll go from there.
Well, first off, if you play it to the very last minute, the trailer, you don't have to replay it, just to let you know. It shows that we're working in collaboration with Popular Resistance and with Embassy Protection Collective Media Group. So the media group itself, we are the founders of, but Popular Resistance, of course, was founded by Kevin Zeese and Margaret Flowers, Dr. Margaret Flowers, and they were among the last 4 that remained in the embassy and were arrested and now are facing trial. And they were among the founders of Occupy DC. And after Occupy DC was crushed, which of course I took part in, they started Popular Resistance, it's a daily news website, and now they're working with us towards that documentary. Sorry about the noise in the background.
Oh, that's fine, man.
So I had been following, I've known Medea Benjamin for a while from San Francisco back when she was with Global Exchange. I've been following her. I've been an activist a good part of my life, and I've been following her feeds, and she was covering when Elliot Abrams came in to be confirmed as the liaison to Venezuela. I remember the Iran-Contra scandal and how he was one of the criminals.
Convicted criminal.
Yeah, and he was pardoned, though, by, I think, Reagan or somebody. Well, after that, I thought, I should be part of this. I should be down there with Medea helping out. So I had been following the coverage at the embassy, and I decided I got to be there. So I went there, and I was there for about the last week of it. A lot happened, and then I met Al like the second day after I was there, and we got involved.
Steve, you were one of the few journalists that were interviewing me when I was up there in May last year at the embassy. And, also you're actually the first to interview us since the trailer's come out. We've shown it publicly, and we've gone to events since then and talked with the people about the trailer here in DC that we've been promoting for the past couple of weeks. But you're actually the first journalist now to interview us about this. So we really appreciate it.
Hell Hell yeah, that's what this show is all about. When I first started the show, I wanted it to be a platform for activists and organizers and artists and just general agitators, because we don't see enough of that in quote-unquote independent media. We've got a lot of people that are making a lot of money by pointing their finger at the establishment or at mainstream media, but that's it. That's the whole fucking show, and there's no go and do this, go do something about it, go be something about it. So that's why I started Slow News Day. And you're right, when you and I were talking, when you were in DC, when you were standing with the embassy protectors, and by the way, that's if you're watching, and I'll play the trailer again, Al is in one of the scenes there trying to deliver food and tangling.
I was with him too.
Yeah, and tangling with.
He was wearing his signature hat.
All right. I almost wore my goddamn fedora today, and I didn't. I'm glad I didn't, because I don't want to be video twinsies with anyone.
Got my.
And I was actually there when Jesse Jackson did the food delivery. I wasn't.
I was home by then, so he went. He was still.
I was right there and helping to wrestle with this guy Mateo.
A couple times.
So this is the second time I'd had to deal with.
We're talking about one of the Venezuelan exiles, one of the most extreme right-wing Guaido supporters.
And this is the guy that was like a helicopter pilot and had some intel agency background or something like that. I remember he was a helicopter pilot. You don't get
he had
that.
a background. We know his first and last name. We're not revealing it at this time, but we are looking into it. And there was two different run-ins with him. There was the first one on May 13th that you see in the trailer, where we had to tackle him down to the ground to get the bag out that he was trying to steal from us. Bag of food, that our comrades desperately needed inside because they cut everything off. And then the second one, I was not there for, David was there for, when he actually tried to confront Reverend Jesse Jackson himself.
Yeah, he tried to grab the bag from Jesse Jackson.
Yeah, that's the extent. So then the cops stood down. We're talking about a national figure, Jesse Jackson. But then Mateo came again to try to intervene, and it took former vice presidential candidate Jamal Baraka. David was right beside them, and Baraka had to put the full force of his body, much like I did, to get him down to stop him from grabbing the bag. But that's just how pathetic these guys are.
And then when I went to the police and I said, arrest the guy, he just stealing the food, they just were like.
Even when he was trying to steal food from Jesse Jackson.
Yep.
That's the corruption.
That's one of the most incredible aspects of the entire siege of the Venezuelan embassy is the coordination between the right-wing fascists from the pretender president Juan Guaido and the fake fucking ambassador Carlos Vecchio and the DC Metro Police and the Secret Service. They're appeared to be working in concert with each other to prevent you guys from simply getting food to the embassy protectors inside.
And we're not naming names at this point, but I can tell you this. We're going to demonstrate over the course of our film a direct link between white supremacist groups or being members of white supremacist groups and the SS officers, Secret Service. So there's really no doubt in my mind that Trump was recruiting some of the most extreme people of the Secret Service to back up the other extremists, the Venezuelans. So they would work hand in glove. Sometimes the cops did the beating up for them. Other times they stood on the sidelines while they beat us up. We tried to nonviolently bring food in and then conducted arrests on us and let the perpetrators go. This was just a common thing that we saw every day.
But I will say this, not all the cops were like that.
Well, we're talking about Secret Service, not Metro cops. Although some of the Metro cops went along with it as well.
Yeah, no, some of the Metro cops were not great either. But I talked at length with a couple of them. And one of them was really, he was kind of like saw our side. But then when an event came where they started stopping the food delivery, I went over to the guy I had talked to, and his sergeant says, "You do not talk to him. You talk to me." And that guy, well, I won't say much about it.
One of the cops said, "Isn't the weather nice today?"
Yeah.
Basically, they got orders that they couldn't talk politics with us, right? Because they were afraid we'd recruit them over to our side. But we were allowed to talk to them about the weather.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
We couldn't say, "Oh, that guy was assaulted," or they stole the food. No, we couldn't talk about that.
I just asked her. I said, "Can I talk to you?" And she said, "Can't do it." So they were clearly under orders. Even the cops that didn't want to do that stuff, they just did what they had to do. And the one guy I talked to, he said, he's working overtime. He's trying to raise a family, and that's all he can do.
We heard these justifications. Where in for trials.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm just
Under
following
international
orders.
law.
Oh, I'm just trying to. You know what? If especially in this modern era, you don't become a cop unless you want to crack some fucking skulls. Like, that's just all there is to it. You get less
did you
training
ever
than a
see-
beautician. You get more,
Right.
100+ hours on the range, and then they tell you to give you a badge, and they tell you to go out and be the law.
Now, did you ever see my interview I did a couple years ago with former police captain out of Philly, Lewis? He was the guy arrested at Occupy New York in uniform.
I don't think so, but I have not been
Ray
able to
Lewis.
watch anything.
I say Ray
since
Lewis
I
and think he's
started
a
this
football.
show a year and a half ago.
I think he's a football star. But anyways, Ray Lewis at one point was a known retired cop who came over to our side. And so I got to interview him on my podcast a couple times. And he's confirmed for like 20 plus years now, because of a court case of a prison guard taking the police to court because they told him expressly, we're not hiring you because your IQ's too high. So the judge sided with the police and said, yes, sir, your IQ's too high to be an officer. And after that, it started changing the hiring practices throughout the country. And so now to be a cop, you have to have a low IQ. And also they have a thing called the sensitivity test. Now with the sensitivity test, their theory is, okay, if we spend all the money to train you and we send you to the street and you see blood and then you quit, so you have to be insensitive, right? But it's also a dangerous combination. So you have dumb cops that don't question orders. You have insensitive cops. You have racism that they get away with in these police unions that are very corrupt that back them up. It's a deadly combination. And actually, one time at the second interview with Ray Lewis, he was like, Alex, I never thought of that before. When I was talking to him about it, he was like, you're right, detectives. It's really scary, right? Because for you to be a detective, I believe it's 3 years, depending on the police force. In Miami, I think it's 3 years. You have to be a street cop for 3 years, and then you're eligible to become a detective. So that's why in a lot of cases, detectives are reliant on investigative journalists to get to the truth, because IQs rarely change. So if detectives are even dumb, you have a problem.
And one thing I want to say, you talked about sensitivity. If they hire people who are insensitive, then they have to go to sensitivity training.
How do you get trained to become sensitive if that's always been your nature? I don't know.
Yeah, they had that because I live in Cincinnati part-time. And in Cincinnati, we had the case of, trying to remember, the guy had his license plate was off, and they went and ended up shooting him in the head, one of the cops, and
And a lot of it, honestly, doesn't have to do with race. There was a kid, I don't remember what city it was, but of course it was in the U.S. And, because in England, for example, the cops have no guns. But he's coming out of the 7-Eleven. He's got headphones. Well, SWAT does. But he's coming out of 7-Eleven. He's got headphones. And the cops give him an order. He doesn't hear him. Clearly, he has headphones in his ear, but they're dumbos. So they shoot and kill him. And they take it to court. They said, we talked with the police here. He should have followed. How's he going to follow orders if he can't hear it? So that was a white kid. So that had nothing to do with race. I mean, a lot of it, race is a big issue, but a lot of it is social class, is stupidity, is impunity. Much like the impunity that we witnessed, which only encourages bullies like those Venezuelan fascists that showed up outside the embassy.
Yeah, there's no real demarcation between a private security force for property owners and a public one. It's just we happen to be paying the salaries of the public private security force for property owners.
Well, Standing Rock, it was different, Steve, though. In Standing Rock, when I was there, they had militarized police that were privatized. They were hired by the contractors.
Tiger Swan. Yeah.
Right. And so these were actually all publicly paid Secret Service and Metro cops. And they acted just like, the same mercenary in Standing Rock, or at least backed up the mercenaries.
Or you have black
Venezuelan exiles.
Blackwater in Iraq.
Right. And we have people that are Venezuelan that helped us out, that worked at the embassy at one point and then worked with Code Pink, like Leo, what's his last name? Leo Flores, who's going to be part of our film project. So it's not like every Latin, I'm come from a Latin background, so it's not like every Latin or Venezuelan was of the right wing that showed up. But when we say Venezuelan, we're talking about the exiles, the far right, upper class people that were there.
Set that up a little bit. Go into that a little bit more, because I'm not 100% sure that people are fully hip to the underlying separation between upper class, typically a little bit lighter skinned Venezuelans, and people who would support, the Bolivarian Republic.
Give me a second.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, the history of South America and North America, we have these Europeans coming in and invading and taking the land from the Native Americans. So it happened for the British and the Spanish and Portuguese in the South America. So Venezuela, is a victim of that, of the conquistadors. So a lot of these lighter skinned people, I believe, are descendants from the Spaniards. And so they've been ruling the country for a good portion of the time.
Years.
So, 500 years. So with Chavismo, there's a revolution to take the government back for the people of the working class and Native Americans. And so the upper class whites don't want that. They're very racist, and we saw it firsthand.
Well, let me give you an examples. I want to touch on Bolivia as well, which is going to be mentioned in the film, but this is stuff that's related, has been going on.
Yeah.
There were, I believe, 40, at least 40 lynchings last year conducted by Venezuelan opposition members targeting people of color and working class people in Venezuela. Many of them, they didn't know if they were Chavista or not. They were supporters of Maduro or the Chavez revolution. Some of them might have happened to be dressed in red, and that's supposed to be a symbol of Chavismo. But they were lynched and killed. One of the cases, there was a Afro-Venezuelan woman who was a maid in a rich upper class home. And after they killed her son and burned him to death, they threw her out on the street and fired her. So that's the type of people that we're dealing with. And so if you look at the case of Bolivia, the white Bolivians are also German descended, because the CIA brought a lot of Nazis to Bolivia. So they have, the grandchildren of Nazis, literally. And I recently wrote an article for Popular Resistance showing how the Nazi Klaus Barbie, who was wanted in Europe at the time, helped train the Rangers with the CIA to kill Che in Bolivia, but that's another story. But anyways, in Santa Cruz, where a lot of these Falange right-wing Christian upper-class whites are, including Camacho, who's one of these oppositions running for president, they have been always hostile to 65% indigenous people in Bolivia, indigenous people like Evo Morales. So you see this racial and class divide culminating in Bolivia with the coup against Evo Morales, just as there was attempted coup multiple attempted coups in Venezuela. Chavez was very proud of his Afro-Indigenous roots, his working class background. He was a promoter of socialism in the 21st century, Bolivarianism, Chavism, as it's called now. So certainly he had, it was a democratic society in Venezuela, in many ways more democratic than here. And so the predominantly opposition media every day called for his assassination.
Even though they're supposedly censored.
Right. And so you had American actors that were known, American celebrities that were sympathizers or supporters of Chavez at the time that went down, like people like Sean Penn. And he did a great interview on Letterman that we wanted to come out in our film. And so when Letterman said, what about Chavez not renewing the license of one of these TV stations? Sean Penn said what I said. He said, what would happen here in the United States if on CNN they called for the assassination of Obama? This was under Obama administration that they did the interview. They would send him, the journalist, to Guantanamo. And so Chavez had permitted, just as Maduro is permitting, these so-called journalists every day to call for assassination. Now, one of the most extreme right-wing channels that multiple times a day called for assassination wanted a renewal of their contract for the government, and they denied it. That's all that happened. It wasn't they're shutting down the media, they're censoring the media. Right. This is not journalism. This is, it's a form of coup itself. It's instilling the coup in the mind of the people that the president must be taken out. And a lot of these stations, they're not only run in Venezuela itself, they're run from Venezuelan exiles in Miami, and they're being transmitted to Venezuela because, again, it's an open and democratic society. They permit these channels to be transmitted into Venezuela, but they're just calling for a toppling of a legitimate government that dozens of organizations from around the world have, we know some of the members personally, have observed these elections, including under Maduro, and they all say the same thing, that they've never seen this system so democratic. You go into a voting machine in Venezuela, it prints you out a receipt. That doesn't happen here in the United States.
And the Carter Center found in 2002 that they had the best system in the world for verification.
Yeah, no, they were heralded as late as like 2015 for having the best elections internationally. And
that was after Chavez's death, because a lot of people say, oh, that was under Chavez. No, Chavez died in 2013. So it's continued that same electoral system under Maduro.
Right. And then when they had the re-election of Maduro in 2018, the opposition are like, oh, we're boycotting this. We're not gonna participate. It's gonna be corrupt. And Maduro said, well, let's bring in some UN observers. And they're like, no. We don't want to make this legitimate.
Yeah, and not only that, the U.S. was pressuring Henry Falcone, who's a moderate, a former Chavista himself, who ran against Maduro. There was a couple candidates, and the major one was Henry Falcone. And so Henry Falcone was pressured tremendously by the United States not to run, and he refused. So Guaido never ran for president.
Right.
Nobody knew who Guaido was.
Right.
I had John Kiriakou on my show
in that moment.
I'm sure you guys
controlled by the opposition, dictatorship.
But John was like, even in, the diplomatic world that still allows me to talk to him, nobody knows who John Guaido is. Turns out he went to
George Washington University in Georgetown.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right down the street from the State Department.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's, in the same way that Pete Buttigieg is a lab-created CIA Democrat, Juan Guaido is a Langley-built opposition force and coup leader. And you were right, Al, at the beginning of the show when you alluded to the fact that nobody was covering this. It was this show. I was talking to you very frequently. The gray zone.
Right after Sherry showed up, when Sherry Huntler showed up, she's in our trailer. She's the lady with the long black hair. If people don't know, she ran for vice president in 2012.
They're breaking the law. They're breaking the law.
They're not letting the food in. Yeah, she's very brave. And so we were there with her. And when I was talking to you, it was the moment that she showed up. We were waiting for the Philly people to show up. And it started raining. And then I got under the, where there wasn't any rain and started talking. He said, Sherry's here,
Yeah. Is that all of your camera work, David?
No.
In the trailer? So where's all that
credit
from?
The trailer.
It's mine.
Yeah.
It's mine, Medea Benjamin,
Ford Fisher,
and then
Morgan. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. But we credit every footage that we use in the trailer. You see it at the credits, and we have
is an invaluable resource for people planet-wide. What Ford Fisher does, if the people in the chat aren't familiar, is he goes to these events. He doesn't really add any of his own commentary. He just airs the footage. He's just showing you what's happening, and then that footage is publicly available on his YouTube channel. In case you want to incorporate it with your own work.
He has a lot of footage too.
And he's got
YouTube demonetized him.
They took his channel down.
I want to make a big deal out of this, but I'm going to tell you something for the first time in an interview. When we initially put up our video, which we did legitimately on YouTube, it was temporarily taken down, no more than an hour or 2 hours. So there was a mix-up. We weren't really given clear reasons why, and then it was put back up. But that's just an example of how YouTube can give activists a hard time. Just like when they demonetize Ford's footage without him even giving an opinion in the footage, just showing the footage. And he's offering his footage up to filmmakers. So it's like, YouTube is part of the establishment.
And I think Lee Camp has said that same thing happened with Google, that his stuff doesn't come up to the top.
Yeah.
The algorithms are, so he
Canova
says,
too. Canova's algorithms went down. We know that. So this is what they do,
That's why Tulsi Gabbard sued Google. Was
Yep.
because
Did she win?
And we know for a fact that Google manipulates the algorithm, and we know for a fact that Google will suppress any outlet that dares speak outside of the narrative, because we've got proof of it in WikiLeaks. We've got proof of it through this lawsuit. Multiple lawsuits have been filed against Google for this. They've had to address it in court. We have the documents on it. There's nothing remotely conspiratorial about it. Google is a fucking heartless corporation that is so interconnected with government that there is no longer any daylight between corporation and state in terms of how efficiently they manage the narrative.
And I'll say one thing about it. What's troubling to me is that Google and Facebook are private corporations.
The Atlantic Council, the lobby group for data control. Go ahead.
So they're private corporations, and they're not accountable to any government really, other than following the law. And they could just shut down, like Facebook, like we have all these interconnections, messengers, and they could just delete all of it and just say, you know what, we're not interested in doing this anymore. It's not profitable. And there's nothing we could do about that.
And so what's so scary to the establishment, Steve, is that in 19 years that I've been involved in activism, I've never seen anything like it. The U.S. government, complicit in a siege more than complicit, active participants in the siege and backing the
Yes.
proxy force outside to starve and thirst out American citizens inside.
Yes.
You hear about
that's the thing that people,
this
people
happened
may
within
not
the U.S.
be-
Capitol.
That's
Yeah.
the thing
And
that
they
people
didn't
may
cover it
not
on the
be
media.
Of course not.
fully
barely-
aware of. The people that were inside the Venezuelan embassy were American citizens invited at the behest of the Maduro government to
Legitimate government.
And
That's correct.
the United States government, with their puppet Juan Guaido and these far right-wing fascist mercs, basically, were allowed more or less free reign to try and storm into this building and do whatever the hell they wanted to do to the people inside. And were it
I
not
was there at
for
3 in the
you
morning.
guys-
Well, David brought me.
Yeah.
But yeah, 3 in the morning they tried to break in one time.
Yeah, they killed the power, they
Exactly
killed
like
water.
what's happening.
The diplomatic police who were trained in the Vienna Convention pretended they didn't know their own laws. Okay, this is the height of complicity here.
You want to talk about what
Yeah,
happened
so
that
I had a feeling about 3 in the morning that woke me up. Nobody called me. I just got this feeling, this intuition. And luckily, I was staying at a hotel down the street from the embassy at the time. And it said, you need to go down to the embassy. So I went there and I met David. And then Margaret starts yelling out the window, Al, help me. They're trying to break into the garage. And David had a better, at that point, this is soon after I arrived. So David had a better understanding
of the
layout, the parameters of the embassy. I said, where's the garage, man? And so we went around and there was another guy with us filming. And it's interesting because the guy that was filming us is named Ed, right?
Ed,
Yeah, he's a homeless guy, not an activist, but
He's a veteran.
But
Yeah.
he knew, well, he's a veteran, and he knew there was a lot of veterans involved, and he knew what was going on. He said, I don't care about the politics. There are Americans inside that need our help, and I'm going to come and help you guys out. So he was filming us. The footage is not that good, but we'll use a little bit for the film. We came around the back where the garage was, and there was like 50 Venezuelans there versus 3 of us.
Yeah.
And so the diplomatic police were the buffer. There was like 2 or 3
And
diplomatic
then
police
also,
officers.
there's a driveway that goes down to the garage. First, we didn't know which garage it was, and we had to figure that out. And nobody was helping us, especially the police. And then this garage that we have, like this wide, the Secret Service car is this wide, blocking it. And then they had the Venezuelan exiles covering this little piece. They just needed 2 of them. And then they had a column of them. So there's no way for us to go down there.
And so what they did to me was quite interesting because I showed up again at like 3:30 in the morning. David drops me off with Russell, a veteran comrade. And so Russell has a camera, and I'm trying to go again to warn them, stop trying to break in that door. The black police at that point made it clear they didn't want to help. We even had Margaret on the phone and telling them what's going on. They pretended they heard nothing.
Yeah, no,
And
because we went up and we said, they're trying to break in. And the guy's like, well, we've been here all night. We haven't seen anything.
And so
It was bullshit.
And so
complete bullshit.
And so when I went back there with Russell, it got really bad. So they actually brought a couple reinforcements because they were afraid we were going to come back. So I'd say there was at least another 5 people. So at that point, they had a couple people in the front, but they had about 55 people there on that side at that point. And so Russell and I run up. Russell's right behind me, and I warn them to stop trying to break in. And at that point, the police get involved. Not the diplomatic police. I think they left already. So the police, I think they were the DC Metro cops. They got involved. And there was an African-American cop putting his gloves on, ready to arrest me. And I told him, I said, look, this guy right here, Russell, he was filming what happened. They assaulted me. And just when he was about to get the handcuffs out, I have no idea why this happened. But a sergeant called him to come across the street, and they left me alone. So I was very close to getting arrested a couple of times. But Russell witnessed something that's quite interesting. So we're going to tie this into Bolivia now. So Russell, when you have the adrenaline in you, you can't even feel when you're touched.
Yeah.
When you're in situations, you're just like, it's survival mode, right? So I didn't even realize somebody pushed me from behind. And so Russell said he witnessed everything. So he said there was multiple Venezuelans, maybe 2 or 3 guys that came from behind me when I was telling them to stop trying to break in. And they pushed me into a Venezuelan woman. I remember the Venezuelan woman. She was right in front of me. And so they pushed me into her to make it look like I was the aggressor. And then they started filming. Oh, he assaulted her. Blah, blah, blah. And you know what's crazy? Later, when Medea Benjamin was accused in the national media of assaulting Congressman Wasserman Schultz, one of the most absurd things I ever heard, because she was never arrested for it, there was never evidence for it, I knew exactly what they did because she was in the press conference with some of the same Venezuelans trained by the same people, and it made it look like she was trying to grab Wasserman Schultz, and they were coming from Medea from behind, who's not a large person, and so they were shoving her, and I said, that's exactly what they did to me.
So let's go into this for a minute because everything that
press conference.
Everything that both of you have described makes the tactics by the Guaido supporters seem to be incredibly militaristic.
Yes.
And
so,
we know
I think
that
so. Many people said that.
We know that the Organization of American States, the OAS, we know that it was a CIA front, but we know that a lot of the graduates of that and of the University of the Americas have gone on to found right-wing militias and right-wing movements that all use these kinds of training and tactics. Can you speak to that in terms of, like, was it just that isolated incident at 3 o'clock in the morning?
Well, let me tell one example. Like when I first got there, well, one of the things that they do is they had all these flashlights that they'd shine in your eyes, which the police wouldn't do anything about that.
In our trailer shows Medea getting assaulted by that. That's assault when you're putting light, laser, flashes in people's eyes. That can cause permanent damage.
And then they also had these bullhorns, and they blare them. They had like police siren type ambulance sirens, very loud.
Ears of journalists too.
Yeah. And then they did it to Ariel's breasts, and there's footage of them putting it.
Yeah, that was on camera.
Yeah. But one of the things in terms of the military aspect, when I first arrived, I checked it out. It was like, really early in the morning. And so I had this canal book with me, and I just pretended like I was checking out the canal. So they started.
I call him the canal man.
Yeah.
You'll hear why.
So, whenever I'd go there, I'd say, I'm going to check out the canal. Let's see what's happening at the canal today.
At night.
And then when they had the little tombstones, I was like, the people who died.
They had a sentry. Like they were like paramilitary.
Yes.
And they had like a sentry that was saying, what's this guy doing looking at the canal? Right?
Yeah, I walked up and he looked like, like a paramilitary guy, in South America with the Contra rebels or something. Mm-hmm. He had like a C, or not a CB, what do you call it? Like a walkie-talkie. It's like, So, they started shining lights in my eyes. And then when I walked around the canal, I went to take some pictures, and 3 guys came up to me like in formation, like, and the head guy, who we call him El Vulgar.
That means the vulgar one in Spanish.
His
name for him.
His name is Roy Molina.
Yeah, we're going to mention that guy's name already.
He came up, and he had 2 guys behind him, in formation, like a nice thing, like he's not going to, they're going to attack if I do anything. And he's like, you can't take pictures of that building. And I'm like, what? Like, who are you to say that? You're the police? And then I said, but I'm just taking pictures of the canal. And he's like, okay. And then he walks off. But I mean, it was very clear to me, to answer that question, that they were using military tactics.
They're also smart because they caught him in the lie. This is when they discovered him.
Yes.
Let
me tell the rest.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I went back towards the front of the building, and then I was going to test him. So I took pictures of of another building. They were shining the lights in my eyes again, and I actually told the guy, please stop that. And he actually stopped. Usually they just keep doing it.
Oh, because they didn't know who he was yet.
Yeah. and then I went to take a picture of the building to see what they would do to the embassy. And then El Vulgar goes, well, I thought you were taking pictures of the canal. And I go, I'm just taking pictures of this building. Because you can't do that. And I go, what's wrong with taking a picture of the embassy? And he goes, you knew it was the embassy. He says, you're a rat.
So remind me not to hire him as a spy, okay?
Yeah. No good at it. So every time I saw him, he's like, how's the canal going? I'm like, oh, it's good.
He's the canal man. Well, we have a lot of nicknames that we're going to use on the film. But
so let's talk a little bit more about the film. And
well, I want to mention Mateo real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
He's another character just like El Vulgar. So, people were describing him as Rambo, like this, I guess he was originally part of the Venezuelan forces. He went rogue and then he joined the opposition, and then he was paramilitary trained or trained by the Chavista, or maybe both. And so there was all these rumors. We don't know that. These are rumors. And so I heard all these things about him. And then when I finally had to deal with him, he has some training. There's no doubt about that. But when you have willpower and there's hand-to-hand situation and they're trying to starve people out and you're trying to save lives, willpower prevails. So that's why Baraka, who's, he's not that young, he's not that fit, was able to successfully stop Mateo. That's why I'm not that good shape either. I was able to bring him down to the ground, and David helped to get that bag out. How could we do that? We're not Superman,
Look, because this has always grinded me a little bit, just because I'm such a fan of Ajamu Baraka's. But
Yeah.
Jesse Jackson completely stole 100% of the shine on that and got 100% of the credit. And even
But we need to
with-
credit Baraka for what he did, and we plan to meet with him.
not
That's
even
how.
a little bit, man. Like,
Yeah, that's
John
not right.
Baraka
He's
was-
not as famous as Jesse, but he deserves his kudos for that too. You're absolutely right.
Yes.
About that. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's
But
always,
but
there's
but-
always
but-
been a rumor about Jesse Jackson as to why he's gotten a pass from the government when all of the
Well,
people
that's kind of
who were
irrelevant to
speaking out
what
against
we're
the
trying. How we're
government
trying to
got murdered.
portray
But that
Jesse.
siege was
We're not trying to
over
get
the
into his
day after
history.
he showed
We're
up.
only showing what he did, and we also want to show what Ajamu did, because if it wasn't for Ajamu, quite possibly Mateo could have got a really strong hold on that food, and it would have complicated us bringing the food up that they desperately needed at that moment.
yeah, Jesse turned things around in terms of the food delivery. If he wasn't there, we would not have
We
gotten those
needed a
deliveries
national
in.
figure. I had said that when I left, and
And
there was people that were connected to Jesse, so they were able to finally bring him.
He brought the media to watch him, and that's why they couldn't block the food then. Otherwise, it would look really bad. Even though he tried, it just made the exiles look even worse.
So there was other people. I'm not going to name names that we're trying to have this similar idea to ours to start a film, and they haven't really come to fruition. But let me just tell you this: there are a lot of people in the establishment that are afraid of this trailer that want to find some excuse to take it down, that don't want the truth to come out. And that's why we need our comrades in the alternative press to really come out and support us now. We're not being interviewed as much as we should. And we feel the more light that's on this, the more chance that the film will be a success and that more people will see it so they can find out what really happened.
Right.
Not just the activists, but the Americans that are unfamiliar with this.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are watching right now, go see Subversive Art. Do that, please. Like for me, for Al, for David, support this film. Do you have an official release date? Do you have all of your footage? Like, what's the
We have a lot of footage, but we're still collecting more footage from more people.
I'll put it this
We're
way.
reaching out. Once we had the trailer out, now people are coming to us with more stuff.
Yeah, but I'll put it this way. Yeah, the trailer did facilitate things. It's still going to be a hard struggle. But I'll tell you this, it's going to be after February 11th, probably. I can tell you that.
Yes.
Because February 11th is the trial of our comrades, and we do not want this film coming out and it being used against them in any way, shape, or form.
Speak on that a little bit, please. Who's going to court on the 11th?
Right. So
Well, the
Adrian, I'll tell the names. So David Paul, Adrian Pine, of course, Kevin Zees and Margaret Flowers. They're the last four that were in the embassy, and they're all facing up to a year in jail, $100,000 in fine plus damages. So this could ruin their credit history, ruin their criminal background. This is very serious, and the judge that we've witnessed so far seems very biased, and we want to have a jury trial, but who knows what's going to go down?
Well, I'll tell you, I was at the last hearing, and it was a discovery motion to get discovery, which is the materials from the other side about what was going on there and what information they had. And actually, there was negotiations with the police, the Secret Service, to remove one of the exiles from the building, and they wanted to show that that there was cooperation from the police, and they wouldn't allow that material to come in, and the judge basically said, you basically were here on this date and until this date, and that's all we're going to consider. We're not going to consider anything else. We don't care who the president of Venezuela is. We don't care what Trump said. We don't want the politics. It's like, we told you to leave and you didn't leave, and that's it. And basically, you're guilty. That's what Judge Stack did.
Blumenthal successfully defended himself.
It's
What's that?
foreign soil. It's not U.S. property. Like, they don't get to come in and say you have to leave.
There's a thing called the Vienna Convention, and let me tell you, so Max Blumenthal, when they went after him, successfully defended himself on discovery because he said, okay, show me the communication between the person who's accused me of assaulting them and the Secret Service. And then they shut the whole case down. When the judge said, okay, go ahead and show that, because they would have showed the complicity. This time the judge was more biased. The judge was different and was completely biased and said, any discovery, anything that has to do outside those parameters, the juror's not going to be able to see. That's their whole defense.
It won't be a fair
It is
trial.
a political trial. How are you going to take politics out of it?
David, what court is
Russia,
that
they
being?
could defend themselves
What
in
court
court.
is
In fact,
that?
What's that?
What court is that being tried?
Judge Howell. Judge Howell.
Yeah.
She's the head judge in that court. But
Is that city of DC or is this?
Yes.
Okay.
No, federal court.
Federal court.
It's in the Washington D.C.
It's
area.
the DC District Court
Right.
for federal charge. It's a federal charge. And you know what's interesting is they're being charged, I believe, with not interfering with the protective functions of the Secret Service regarding the embassy. Well, what's interesting is they're not. Basically, they had this thing. You're not supposed to be here. And it was like a trespassing issue. And then they waited 72 hours, like trespassing. But it's not a trespassing charge. And then
No, they couldn't charge them with that because they were there legally and they knew that.
Right.
It's just interference, on their investigation or whatever.
But it's like
a very serious charge.
the judge won't even allow them, as far as I can remember, to talk about the fact that this is really a trespassing charge disguised as something else, and it's not a legit trespassing charge.
And Kevin Aziz is a defense lawyer by trade, but he's not defending himself. He's relying on other lawyers. But the prosecution didn't even speak, right? It was just the judge acting as a prosecutor.
They just had these two young attorneys there, and I think the senior attorney said, "Hey, you go down there, don't say anything." And the judge did all the speaking for them. Really, I mean, the judge was, and she just had this look
already made up.
She had this look like, "What do you? Oh, you want to do what?" Like
she
had already
you said she seemed like the soup kitchen in Seinfeld, right?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
No justice for you.
Guess who was in the court? No, I want to tell him this. Even though you were there, I want to tell him this.
Yeah,
Guess
sure.
who was in the court?
Who was in the court, Al?
Mateo had the gall to show up to the courthouse and sit in that courtroom.
And I'll tell you something about
Shameless.
Mateo. Mateo, he always looks so, I'm just here. You're just poor Mateo. I don't do anything. I'm not a problem. He acts so innocent. When he first came to the embassy, they told me he sat and acted like he was a reporter. He's just taking notes. Oh, hi, I'm just here. Oh, yeah. He's such a, I don't know. I think he probably works for the CIA, honestly.
Well, I was going to say, that sounds like reconnaissance to me. It
is. There's no question about it. But who's he working for? Is he being paid? Don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Even the name we have for him might not be his real name, but he's known by that name.
Well, no, there was wasn't there a social media account from him?
So the helicopter picture makes me think he was a pilot and defected from the Venezuelan forces and joined the opposition. Maybe it's some coup attempt. We're going to have to look into that. But, they ended up in D.C. under the government's protection. They had to be important guys in the opposition.
Oh, and he was honored.
He was one of the leaders.
He was honored by some
A right-wing priest. Yeah, they went there to congratulate him.
And by Guaido.
Of course, Guaido recognized him on Twitter. That means Mateo's an important guy. And so, he's up there with Vecchio and the guys that Guaido thanks for their help in D.C. So there is definitely something about this guy and him feeling so untouchable in the level that he went to try to stop us.
Well, Vecchio, we know, was rewarded with the ambassadorship because he successfully negotiated.
You know what?
Or no, not.
Title is. Actually, what's interesting, his title is not ambassador. I saw on CNN they put him on the ambassador. In CNN, they gave no context to the fact that that this thing is disputed, and his actual title is Charge d'Affaires.
Yeah, but not only that. So we predicted this. We know history can predict things. I said Guaido's going to be abandoned by Trump. I knew this. And so what happened was Guaido, when he lost the head of the National Assembly, he lost his justification because they took a part of the Venezuelan constitution out of context and said, oh, well, now the head of National Assembly can be president. Now he's not even the head of National Assembly. He lost that position. And so a lot of people have abandoned Guaido, not only U.S. government, his own people. And, we told them this was going to happen. It's like what Kissinger said. We have no allies. We have interests. So, Noriega was a close ally of the United States, Saddam, bin Laden, the list goes on.
Noriega was a goddamn CIA asset. We know that.
Yes, exactly.
We know that.
Absolutely.
This is an undeniable fact.
Osama bin Noriega.
Oh, yes, I know. He worked at the school. He trained at the School of the Americas, yeah.
Yeah, I need to do a whole episode on the School of the Americas. That's a
you should.
And
they use academia to recruit. The CIA goes into academia and recruits these guys, these immigrants, and says, "Do you want to be the leader of your country? Or do you want to be the leader of the opposition in your country?" And these greedy guys, they recruit them from early on.
Apparently they've disbanded the School of Americas. Now they probably call it the School of Defense of,
It's still there. They
it's
just
like
changed
the
the
Department
name.
of War,
It's
it's renamed Department of Defense.
It's like Blackwater. Blackwater, they're called Academy now, I think.
Yeah.
So they changed the name to protect for PR purposes, but they're doing this
5 times. They've had 5 name changes since Blackwater first became sort of a household name. But yeah, and
the sister of the founder, the sister of the founder, the sister of the founder of Blackwater is the Secretary of Education.
Yeah, Betsy fucking DeVos. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and she's a right-wing Christian. I mean, these are right-wing Christian militias, pretty much.
Yeah,
like
no, Betsy DeVos is she's a really interesting figure, man. She's one of the heirs.
I don't want to go too off tangent on that because I want to bring up Bolivia. I was trying to bring up Bolivia earlier.
Yeah,
so
and we've got about 10 more minutes in this first hour. So whatever you feel like you need.
So let
me
put this out there real quick. It's important. So when Medea Benjamin a couple months ago showed up at the press conference in D.C., where Congresswoman Washington Schultz was present with Diaz-Balart, one of the right wing Cuban Congresspeople. Yeah. They were there in support of the Bolivian coup, and she was there to disrupt it. And so she wasn't there to hurt anybody. She was there to put up a sign, as a lot of people do, in the middle of the press conference that said "No coup in Bolivia." And that's when the Venezuelans who were in the crowd came after her to make it look like she assaulted Washington Schultz. The police, it's on video, came to Medea's residence in D.C., and she challenged them to show proof that she had touched the congresswoman. And they didn't arrest her, but they defamed her in the press afterwards. It was all over the media that she had grabbed the congresswoman. But these are the tactics that they use, and it really does tie into Bolivia. Evo Morales was a close ally of Maduro as a Bolivian president, and he's an indigenous socialist. And the struggle continues. We have Latin socialists, including Bolivians here in exile in the D.C. community. That we met with a couple of them last night. And so wherever they are, they're today I think actually Evo Morales is supposed to announce who his 2 candidates that he's going to back for president. So if his party takes control again in Bolivia, Evo Morales can return, not as president, but he can return. We're not have to face any phony charges. So
I was going to say one thing about the pushing thing is, he gave a couple of examples of people who were pushed. Another one that I saw was in doing some research on some of the opposition, they had posted a tweet saying, "Oh, look, they assaulted me," and I looked at the footage, and it was interesting. A guy was coming in, and I think what he was trying to do is, it was early on, he was trying to make a food delivery, and he was walking and trying to go between them, and then what happens is he almost runs up to them, and then they jump back like, "Oh my God, he hit me!" And then
it reminds me of.
And then they jump on him, I think, and then so no one can see what's going on. But I talked to some people about it, and apparently they sped up the footage, and it's like it's like they've been trained to make it look like somebody's assaulted them when they haven't.
Well, I'm going to tell you something about the fraudster Guaido. So he showed up recently at the National Assembly trying to make it look like they tried to block him from getting in when he was voted out as head of the Assembly. So this loser staged this whole thing, and I speak Spanish. So the opposition people that are posting the videos to Americans don't know Spanish, like posting their lies. I responded, they said, "Excuse me, I understood exactly what Guaido said in the video." So what he was telling to the military police at the entrance of the National Assembly, he brought all these unauthorized people with him to try to force them to get in. And the military people, police said to him verbatim, "You can come in. These other people, we're going to have to check their papers, but you can come in, sir." And you know what Guaido said? "That's okay. I don't have to enter. I have to consult with some people." And he made a phone call, to where? Washington.
Yeah.
It was all staged to make it look like he couldn't get in. So everything these people are doing is verifiably false. But, the mouthpiece of Trump's foreign policy is the so-called mainstream media, including the ones that have been hostile to Trump and other matters. But, of course, when it comes to imperialism, they're all going to back the president.
And I want to give some context to that. That was basically Guaido. They have an election for who's the head of the National Assembly once a year. So Guaido had to get it renewed if he wants to continue to be the so-called president of Venezuela. And so they had the vote on, I think it was January 5th on a Sunday. And he's claiming, "Oh, they wouldn't let me in." And based on what he was just saying, what's also interesting is they had the picture of him. He's climbing over the fence. He's struggling, and then he falls down. But the funny thing about it,
he's even clumsy about it.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it though is Maduro says, "There's one Guaido, he can't make it over the fence."
He never even ran for president. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It'd be like Nancy Pelosi after Hillary and Trump ran.
No,
saying,
it would be like Nancy
President, like
Pelosi's
the
housekeeper's cousin suddenly becoming president. Like,
Yes.
Well, it would be like her saying the Russians have to come invade now to back me as the new president because I don't like how elections went with Trump and Hillary. It would be like
Right.
Pelosi saying that.
Yes.
And so that's what happened. Only it's not the Russians, the Americans. Guaido every day was calling for U.S. invasion of this country. If that happened in the United States, we call it what it is, treason. But the media is not showing what's really going on.
Oh, I want to say one thing about Guaido. So basically, the U.S. has said he's the president, and then like 50 other countries.
Russia and China hasn't. Half the world has.
Out of 200, maybe 50 of the U.S.
That's right.
allies, and then
The majority of the world doesn't recognize it.
and Pompeo said you have to pick a side. You can't be neutral in this. So what's interesting though is Guaido now has control of all these assets, including Citgo, the oil and the money and so on.
He's
And then
money.
if there's a lawsuit, I was reading up on it. When there's a lawsuit, the attorneys won't talk to Maduro, the real government. They'll talk to Guaido's people. So they have control of all of this stuff that they shouldn't have control of. But what's really interesting is with Citgo. So apparently Citgo, because they can't get the oil from Venezuela because of U.S. sanctions, they're losing money and they're not paying their creditors. And so they're about to go into bankruptcy. But the problem with that is, who's the main creditor? Russia. And so the U.S. doesn't want Citgo to go to the Russians. So they're like, well, we'll make an exception for this.
Yeah,
we'll give
because they're going to move the headquarters
Guaido
to
our
Moscow
guy.
pretty soon.
Guaido's our guy, and then of course Maduro's not going to help out with it because
That's nothing. They're saying that Parra, who's another scumbag of the opposition in the assembly, who's been accused of corruption, who's supposed to be the new head of the National Assembly, they're saying that he's paid by Maduro. I mean, it's pathetic, like how the opposition are so divided. And if you actually look at who are the most organized and most united people, it's the party that belongs to Maduro. That's why they end up winning in these legitimate elections. A few times the opposition does win, like for the assembly position, then they don't call it a dictatorship. Every other time when they lose, it's like, oh, then there's fraud or they boycott.
No,
That's
you're
how
only a dictator if you're trying to move away from having your currency be spent in U.S. dollars, or if you're trying to give agency to the poorest in your country, then you're a dictator. You're a partner or an ally if you are a right-wing puppet strongman that the U.S. has propped up and supported so that we can eventually acquire the natural resources and exploit the labor.
And regarding the money, I think one thing that's interesting is what you said about using U.S. currency, and I think people are starting to switch over to Chinese or other currencies.
the yen or the yuan or the Japanese currency.
And then one other thing that's interesting is that now they have this thing called petrodollars. They have an encrypted currency
in Venezuela.
So I didn't believe much in Bitcoin and any of that until I heard about this. What's the U.S. going to do about that? They're trying to make that illegal.
The Chinese are getting into Bitcoin too. Like it's a big thing now. Like so, the U.S. empire is in decline. It's still a military superpower, but economically, it's certainly in decline. And
according to Chomsky, we started our decline right at the end of World War II, and everything.
Yeah, now it's like it's culminating.
Well, it had to at some point, but you can't. Every empire dies because they've overextended their military capability. They've overextended their own people. They've overextended their resources. Trump is bragging about spending $2.5 trillion on the military. Meanwhile, we're having a fake ass conversation at home about a fake fucking rigged ass election where even still, how are you going to pay for Medicare for all? How are you going to pay for tuition free college? Are you fucking kidding me? We can pull 2.5 trillion out of our ass, but Flint doesn't get clean water. Or the 3,000 other cities that are as bad as Flint don't get clean water.
The United States cannot afford to occupy Iran. They'd have to bring back the Civil War. That's for the reason why Trump backed off. We might have the weapons to do it, but we don't have the willpower to occupy a nation 4 times the size of Iraq that's much more united with a much stronger military.
87 million people in Iran would immediately become anti-West like we've never seen. And look,
they already are getting that way.
No, but like we never seen before.
Yeah.
We was Lord Admiral West, high-ranking British military officer, said it would take 1 million bodies on the ground to secure Iran, not hold it, just secure it initially. We would have to put more than 1 million people on the ground. We have 1.3 active duty U.S. military worldwide, 980 bases that we're allowed to know about, and unclassified amount of forward operating bases, of lily pads.
Bases, yeah.
And not to mention all the black
CIA.
sites that we have.
The CIA that even the Congress members can't look at. That makes me feel much more secure knowing they're overthrowing other governments.
It reminds me of
that don't help the
it
rich.
reminds me of the voter machines in the United States. Unlike in Venezuela where they have receipts, it's actually illegal to inspect them. It's proprietary law. So the corporations control our voting machines. We're not even allowed to look at them. That's what happened with Canova. I mean, it was clear rigging, and we couldn't even investigate. We only investigate the paper ballot, of course, they destroyed. But so this is our so-called democratic system.
I'll mention that with Canova. He did a Freedom of Information Act request and asked for the documents, and they stalled and they stalled and they stalled, and then they're like, you know what, we destroyed them.
Yeah. Whoops.
Of evidence.
Turns out we shredded
criminal act. That's a criminal act.
Yeah. But this is Washington. I mean, just like she backs regime change in Bolivia. I mean, she's the far right of the Democratic Party. Yep.
Well, and let's be honest, the Democratic Party is only there to be a gatekeeper to the progressive movement. Like, that's why
trying to keep it at
co-opt
or keep us at bay. That's absolutely right.
Yeah, guys.
I mean, I had an important friend unfriend me on Facebook. I'm not going to name him, but because
you're allowed to do that here, David. By the way, like we you're allowed to.
You're not talking about some.
All right, fine. I'll just go ahead and say it. It's Paul Hogarth. He's a good reporter. He's a good reporter, and I really liked him. He was with the Greens and that, and he unfriended me.
He wasn't really a Green though. He was a Democrat.
Well, yeah, he kind of supported, but we worked together on that, and he was a good reporter, and he unfriended me because I said that the DNC was responsible for Trump, and the evidence is 100% clear.
Of course.
And I'll just repeat it for anyone who doesn't know that Bill Clinton called Trump the day before he ran and gave him advice on how to be a good candidate.
His running guest, right? Very close to
and then the documents that came through WikiLeaks showed that they had a Pied Piper strategy. They wanted to elevate Trump because they wanted him to be the opponent. And that's what came out. But of course, it's the Russians' fault that has been shown to be as corrupt as they are.
One of the analogies I give when they always talk about Russia, a Russian mob in exile in the United States doing business with Trump, and that's true. Trump did business with everybody. These were the guys kicked out of Russia by Putin, and they're trying to use that to say that he's a Putin agent. So it would be like going to Miami and meeting with Cuban exiles and say, "Oh, you see, that's proof that you're a Fidel agent." These people.
The easiest way to make a blue no matter who liberal's head explode is to say, so look, Trump's an asset of Vladimir Putin, yeah? Oh, yeah. Vladimir Putin's puppet. We know it. We goddamn know it. Okay, why did all of the fucking Democrats just vote to extend the Patriot Act? Why did all of the Democrats?
I know.
Why did all of the Democrats just give him $2 trillion to go make war? Are you going to tell me, with your fucking pussy hat, that your pet politician just gave Vladimir Putin $2 trillion to go to war? You're gonna tell me that your pet politician signed off on warrantless surveillance of Americans at the behest of Vladimir Putin's puppet? Really? That's the thing. Oh man, you'll lose more than just one Facebook friend over that. You will.
You can't say that. You can't say the truth anymore. It's like what Orwell said. Speaking the truth in a world of universal deceit is a revolutionary act. It's considered revolutionary.
And I'll tell you about Obama. Things that one of the reasons I didn't vote for Obama the first time was because when it came to the spying, when it came out, I don't know if it was Snowden. There's a guy in San Francisco. He saw these trunk lines, and he saw one of these trunk lines that had all the phone calls went into this black box, and he looked into it and found out it went to the NSA. Yep. And he's like, what the fuck? And so he was a whistleblower, and so then all these people sued their cell phone carriers and said, what the fuck? Why were you collaborating to break the law? And then Obama, along with a whole bunch of other people, signed the Immunity Act saying that you cannot, that it was retroactive, saying you can't sue them for having collaborated with us.
Retroactive was after the second term of Obama.
So Obama signed that. It shows that he was in line. With
he was in line with the surveillance state from the beginning.
Yes.
You know that. If you read his biography, he admits working for a front group that we found out was CIA. This goes all the way back to his college days. So this was all planned, So, it's no surprise.
Yeah. So
No, you're absolutely right. And that led to every single product that Facebook releases, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, has a built-in backdoor for law enforcement to go right in and read all of your private messages. On other platforms, that capability has to be requested, but on Facebook, it's granted right away.
I will tell you, Wikipedia is an interesting case, and I would look it up. They actually sued because the CIA or NSA wanted a backdoor, and they're like, "Fuck this," and then they actually sued, and I think they won actually.
It's funny you mentioned that. Wikipedia has this verified poster called, I think, Philip Glass. And Philip Glass is...
Philip Cross.
Cross, that's right. Philip Cross will remove any information that runs counter to a narrative. Philip Cross, as far as I know, is at least 3 or 4 different people. And is basically just a Bellingcat product, a narrative management machine.
Well, on Wikipedia, Bellingcat is considered reliable.
Yeah.
But Telesur and Gray Zone and Mint Press, your RT, those are considered almost completely unreliable. But Bellingcat, which is funded by the National Endowment for Democracy. Yeah. No, they're okay. Those are reliable. This is like a puppet state of Russia or the Maduro government.
You can't even state facts to say that's opinion. Like, for example, when Assange offered $40,000 for information on the death of Seth Rich here in D.C., you couldn't even report on that in Wikipedia. You're just stating a fact.
Oh, no, that's
made an offer.
That's a conspiracy.
Opinion.
That's a conspiracy
theory.
Right.
That's a conspiracy. You're saying what Assange said, not if you agree with it. You can't even quote him now. Like, I don't know.
You're not allowed. You're not allowed to cite Joe Biden's record without it being a personal attack. You're not allowed to.
Really?
That's how it's considered. I don't know. People get mad at me when I showed the congressional roll call for the House and Senate bill that allowed more blanket immunity for CIA officers, just not officers, not undercover assets, but anyone employed in any of the alphabet agencies, more immunity. And I showed that at least half of the squad voted for that. And
they have immunity, that means they have impunity.
Yep.
And I got, I was accused of attacking the squad for showing their votes. I could say a lot, but I don't have to, because here's the primary source document that they themselves voted for. I don't really need to.
I gotta tell you, one time on CNN, I have to watch it because someone in my family watches it 24/7. And when I'm there, I have to watch it.
Fake news
in the background. Well, what was funny is one time, this guy, one of the reporters, is talking to another one. So it's like, let's say he's here, and he's saying, this Democrat, this Democrat, this Democrat, they all supported blah 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 having to do with the impeachment. And the other reporter goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, you forgot Amy Klobuchar." And I needed to mention her because otherwise we're going to get an angry phone call.
So they're not even trying to hide the fact that they're controlled by the Democrats and that. It's just,
Klobuchar is interesting, man. She appeals to a set of liberals who feel like Elizabeth Warren might be a little too radical.
Yes. I know.
That says a lot because Warren's to the right of most Republicans.
Right. And you Bill Maher will come out and push her. And fucking it's like I listened to that debate. I was live tweeting the last debate. By the way, if you ever want to laugh and I can get depressed and stoned enough to listen to a debate again, I'll end up live tweeting the next
I
one.
can't handle it.
Oh
We
my
walked
God,
out.
dude.
This whole like Warren versus Sanders thing, it's like, so what? I doubt he said it, but if he did say it, like, what's the big deal? They're making it like a soap opera or something.
And then the billionaire came in to mediate. Oh, wow.
That guy and his plaid tie, he by saying, "Oh, I wanted to say hi, Bernie," he got more love on Twitter the next day than he ever had in his entire career, and it just shows how cult of personality will direct a fairly significant portion of the population into doing damn near anything, which is why I would really love Bernie Sanders to mention Julian Assange's name out loud, because then you would have millions of people who would maybe be exposed to it for the first time or consider it the first time and go and bring some of that energy that they give to a guy who is clearly getting robbed again.
I don't
remember.
Okay, so I want you when you get a chance, the News to Share videos has which is the organization run by Fort Fisher we mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
They have a video that's an hour long. That the entire video, and we listened to it on the ride up here, was wonderful. Is with one of the Assange lawyers, and it all takes part in April inside the Venezuelan embassy. Kevin Aziz is hosting it, and Medea's there. There's a roundtable discussion, and they're all asking questions of this expert, this Assange lawyer, and trying to figure out ways to support Assange. But that was inside the embassy.
Yeah.
So Assange was, inspiring a lot of what they did, their resistance. So it's interesting because Kevin is a lawyer as well. So if your viewers are interested in that type of stuff, encourage them to go on YouTube, go on News to Share, and then when you see the News to Share Julian Assange video from inside the embassy, you'll see Kevin and others that were involved in the Venezuelan embassy talking with this lawyer about that.
Maybe that attorney would go on your show.
Yeah, and that was from a year ago, and Assange is still in terrible conditions like he was back then. And Manning's still in jail. It's terrible. But
as of today, as a matter of fact, Chelsea Manning is up over $200,000. She's at $203,000 in fines and 270.
It's ridiculous. That's all they get you with fines. Yeah.
Reincarcerated.
A contempt of court charge. That's unheard of.
What it is, what they want is for her to walk into a perjury trap. They already have her testimony. And this is a point that her legal team has made over and over again. If you want to ask her about this issue, you have all of her testimony. She has nothing to add to what she has already said. You have it. This is cruel. This is inhuman.
Even if she cooperated and then said, "I plead the fifth." When I say cooperate, I mean by showing up and finally being questioned.
Yeah.
There's always the fifth. You're going to be held in contempt now. You're going to be there even longer. So she's just holding out. I think they can't hold her longer than September. But that would be more than a year from when they initially put her in. It's ridiculous. It's
we actually her birthday was a couple of weeks back, and we had a special edition of the Free Assange Vigil that we do every Wednesday. And Ron Placone came on, Jason Burmis came on. It was a really good time. But we had a statistic in front of us that we read off, and I'll share again. 77% of Chelsea Manning's adult life has been spent incarcerated.
Wow.
She was so young when she did what she did.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I think she was 22, 23 when she first became a whistleblower. But 77%, that's amazing.
That's bad.
That's amazing.
77%. It's wild. And I heard...
But Obama was going to protect the whistleblowers. That's what he's election.
Well, and look,
President Park only goes so far, I guess.
There's a reason that her sentence was commuted, but she was not pardoned. That would allow any other Justice Department
more easily when it's commuting. That's right. Yeah.
That would allow for any other administration to go ahead and re-incarcerate her. If he would have pardoned her, then they would have to bring an entirely new case against her, and she would be able to remain outside.
Yeah, this is related to the old case, but I didn't realize because it's a commutation and not a pardon.
Yep.
Doing this, But look, we hope your listeners will go on YouTube. Your viewers.
I'm about to post the link in the chat for the trailer right now.
Why don't you show the
Twitter video too?
Why don't you show the trailer again?
And I will. I'll go ahead and play that one more
share
time.
again and show
I
the
want to
credits.
thank both of you very much for being on the show today. I'm glad I got to be
Sure,
your first
thank you.
interview.
It's been a pleasure, man.
I have a series of first interviews for some significant moments. I was the first person to interview Whitney Webb right as when her Epstein series dropped. We got Ray McGovern on the Free Assange Vigil the day that he was issued a subpoena, so we got to break that story to the entire planet. I can't support the film enough. I'm gonna go ahead and play the trailer again and share screen and restart. Come on. Cooperate with me, laptop.
Free Venezuela, free DC. Free Venezuela, free DC.
This compound, this diplomatic building is inviolable, meaning it cannot be seized.
We're preventing food from going up!
Is the police stopping them from getting food into the building?
You guys are breaking the law! Inside! Jennifer, come on! Inside!
We have been holding down this space for over 2 weeks now.
Back up. Let the officer do his job.
¿Quiénes somos? ¿Qué queremos?
He's doing it. It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the credits. Okay.
And then wait, Morgan
Artayukina, something like that. Yeah. She was one of the persons in footage we used.
Excellent. Well, please tell
I wanted to
everybody
mention-
where they can find you. Please
Yeah, yeah.
tell them where they
Before
can find
I
out
wanted to
more
mention
information
that
about
there's
the
a
film.
woman there. You see the woman who was arrested. We ran into her by chance in Baltimore.
in Baltimore yesterday. We went
Very
to a
brave
protest.
woman,
It was a protest about the war and about cutting food stamps.
Yeah, for Martin Luther King Day, tying the cutting the social program, U.S. war and imperialism, and then we met later with Latin American leftists in a church. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can reach us on Embassy Protectors 2020 on YouTube and it's the
Twitter.
same name on Twitter, Embassy Protectors with an S on the end, and then the year 2020. And then we have the Embassy Protection Collective Media Group on Facebook. There's two. There's Embassy Protection Collective and then Media Group. So ours is the Media Group.
And then we're going to have a website soon, and
Right.
we'll have ongoing news. And we'll probably post your show. Thanks for having us.
Definitely, we're going to share the show and help get the truth out to the people, man.
All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. You can go ahead and sign off. In the chat and watching at home, stick around. I've got some stuff that I'm going to cover. If you weren't aware, we live in a fucking surveillance state. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this article up. Big thanks to Al and David for being on today. I appreciate it a lot. This is an op-ed in the Washington Post, and that there is John Durham, who is opening an investigation into the origins of Russiagate. The Washington Post is kind enough to let you know who the authors of this piece of shit are. Robert Litt served in the Justice Department from 78 to 84 and 94 to 1999 as General Counsel to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. from 2009 to 2016. So these are Carter and Clinton and Obama appointed attorney. And John McLaughlin served as deputy director of the CIA from 2000 to 2004 and acting director in 2004, and teaches at Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. So McLaughlin was originally appointed by Obama and kept on under Clinton and kept on under Bush II. The article kicks off. John Durham, federal prosecutor chosen by Attorney General Barr to examine the origins of the Russia investigation, is reportedly reviewing the intelligence community's conclusions about Russian interference in our election. Although Durham has not confirmed the precise scope of his investigation, if these reports are correct, it is a worrisome development. Now let's go over that a little bit. Just the opening salvo from these motherfuckers. Here, hang on. I'm getting. Can everybody hear me? Let me know if you can hear me in the chat. Because I want to talk about how ridiculous it is to have a former D&I lawyer and a former deputy director from the CIA even have to come out and make this argument in the first place. The amount of narrative control that it takes to get to a situation where casually top spooks are like, hey, look, even doing a cursory examination of the conclusions that intelligence analysts came to is dangerously irresponsible. Are you kidding me with this shit? The entire team pussy hat right now is making this giant argument in the media and all across social media and every corner of the internet that no one is above the rule of law. That's why Trump's getting, that's why the articles of impeachment were finally delivered to the Senate, not because they needed to pull Bernie Sanders off the campaign trail for as long as they possibly could, but because no one is above the rule of law. At the exact same time, you've got a D&I lawyer and a CIA deputy director going, everyone who is an intelligence analyst is above the law. Rule of law doesn't matter here. The outright contempt that they show for the American public in this article is just fucking insane. Let's go back to it a little bit. There's a couple of paragraphs that I want to highlight. Yeah. An intelligence analyst does not have a prosecutor's luxury to decline to proceed in the face of ambiguous information. Even when information is incomplete and conclusions uncertain, policymakers need to make decisions. We will rarely, if ever, have definite proof of what Vladimir Putin is planning. This is on the page of the fucking Washington Post, where democracy dies in darkness, and as Jimmy Dore says, they're helping. Or of the state of North Korea's nuclear arsenal, or whether Osama bin Laden is hiding in Abbottabad. And parenthetically, estimates before the raid that killed him varied from 40 to 80% likely. We could talk about that in a second. But the president and his advisors still must decide what to do, even in the absence of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. They need the intelligence community's best understanding, even when that understanding is incomplete or inferential. Y'all, that is extreme contempt for us peasants. They're just the number of outright bullshit statements in that paragraph alone. So they're telling you, you know, years after the fact, oh, we had less than a 50% chance to maybe an 80% chance that Osama bin Laden, who we had previously put on the front page of the New York Times as a freedom fighter, was where we said where he was going to be when we killed him. No, you're never going to have any proof that that actually happened. And yes, every single person on the SEAL team that was involved in that mission is dead, except for the one guy who is absolutely towing the party line on this one. Yeah, sure, that happened. But we're here to reinforce the fact that you should never question intelligence analysts, and it's incredibly irresponsible if you were to look into what information they had when they had it. That's for fucking suckers, and you're not a sucker, are you? Are you? And go back to the article here, because I said this on Twitter, by the way. And by the way, if you're not following me on Twitter, it's at Slow News Day Show. I would recommend that you do. But that's because I'm writing the fucking content. The last paragraph is one of the most Orwellian fucking things that I've read in a while. And we have a pre-crime division now. Let me blow this up a little bit, because it's a fucking doozy. You son of a bitch. There we are. Subjecting intelligence professionals to criminal investigation and the possibility of criminal prosecution for their analysis is profoundly dangerous. It is especially so when the scrutiny of their work can be seen as driven by politics, by 3 years' worth of critical tweets from the president. It is a hoary cliche that no less true, that the function of the intelligence community is to speak truth to power, regardless of how unpalatable the truth may be. If analysts fear they may come under criminal investigation for judgments the president does not like, our nation will be less safe. Chew on that shit for a second, will ya? Let's remember that the whole reason the Justice Department, they're commenting, is because the Justice Department wants to look into the origin of the Russiagate hoax. So, of course, they're going to say it's especially dangerous when the scrutiny of their work can be seen driven by politics. Because, you know, there was nothing political about the Clinton campaign cooking up Russia hacked our freedom. I'm trying to remember if there was anything else I was going to get into or not. I don't think I had any specific news item that I wanted to go into this morning outside of that. If you guys have any questions, throw them in the chat right now. our GoFundMe for the coverage of Julian Assange's extradition hearing in London and the protests and events that are going to take place in DC is still up. We very much need your help for that. If you can, please donate. I'm going to throw the link in the chat here in a second. This Wednesday on the Free Assange Vigil, we're going to have Ray McGovern back with us. That is always a fantastic conversation. Ray McGovern is hands down one of my favorite people to like, I feel bad asking questions. You know, like, I just want to be like, talk. Just whatever you want to say. Just go and talk about it for as long as you want. That's awesome. But he'll be back on. If you haven't, please go check out last Sunday's show where we had Tariq Haddad joining us. He has got a handful of just incredible stories that he related to us during the course of that show. Jeff Edelman, truly unbelievable this gets printed. Look, it says a little bit to me about how far out of control narrative management has become when you've got to come out and say shit like this in the first place. Look, the Justice Department itself is a highly politicized entity, and of course the Trump administration is using the Justice Department to go after the people that tried to have him removed from office through a fucking fake investigation and a soft coup. Of course that's going to happen. Like, where we are right now, though, with these guys coming out and saying, how dare you want to look into what the intelligence said? How dare you want to look into the motives of our analysts? That's an authoritarian state flexing every ounce of its muscle in order to get the peasantry to shut the fuck up and bow their necks and go back to work. What's up with all the attacks on Susie? If you could be a little bit more specific, I don't know. Who do I think paid for the article? I think the Washington Post routinely prints op-eds from people that hold up the national security state. I don't think anybody got paid for that. I think that was voluntary narrative management. Look, Susie gets attacked all the time for all kinds of different angles, I guess, but all for the same reason, because she speaks truth to power, because she's currently taking her fight directly to the intelligence community. She doesn't stop calling out their bullshit. I don't know, man. She's one of the most tenacious people that I've ever had the pleasure of speaking to, and I hope that I have an opportunity to talk to her again relatively soon. Yeah, I don't think anybody necessarily paid for it. It's an op-ed in the Post. When it comes with that, I don't know if I've successfully answered your question about the attacks on Susie. I mean, it's like a wave, and Susie's making a point to call out the farce that is the U.S. political process in the midst of primary season. Elections suck up all the energy in the room. They suck up all the light. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that Julian's extradition hearing starts either the same week as Iowa primary or the week right after, when New Hampshire and Nevada and South Carolina are voting. If you're an activist that's committed to freeing Julian Assange, it is an overwhelming bummer to have that happen during an election year. One of the reasons that Occupy was able to happen, was able to gain traction and to have enough information spread about it, is because it was 2011. There were no elections going on. Had to talk about something. The timing of it in terms of exposure and coverage and the ability to share information was just perfect, and the response to it was complete and total violence and a show of brute authoritarian force meant to crush, if possible physically, the people who were on the ground advocating, but certainly to stamp out our collective will. And Susie is one of those few people that came out of Occupy that is still going as strong and as effectively. So of course there are going to be attacks, but they do come and go in waves. And a lot of it coincides with, big events coming up, such as the extradition of Julian Assange. If you set up the smear attack several months in advance, it's already in people's head when the event takes place. And then if your propaganda is successful, then when you come out and report accurately on the event, you're immediately dismissed because of a smear campaign. Yeah, I think that's about it for me. Big thanks to Al Suarez and David Tornheim for allowing me to be the first media interview on the documentary film Embassy Protectors. There's a link to the trailer in the chat. I will put a link to the trailer in the show notes. And I will make sure to tweet the link to the trailer out a few times. I'll put it on the Facebooks. Thank you for hanging out, being a part of this with me. I hope that I will see you on Wednesday for the Free Assange Vigil. My name is Steve Poikinen. This has been Slow News Day. Good luck to us all.